Welcome to our video on the topic of regional awareness and competence. This video accompanies our journal article assessing gains in language proficiency, cross-cultural competence, and regional awareness during study abroad, a preliminary study. In this study, we identify three important and interrelated outcomes of study abroad. That is, language proficiency, cross-cultural competence, and regional awareness. Together, these three concepts form a more holistic perspective on study abroad outcomes. Although language proficiency and cross-cultural competence are commonly discussed outcomes, the concept of regional awareness and competence is a relatively new area of study. In this video, we will specifically focus on the concept of regional awareness and discuss how this principle applies to the 5 C's, the National Standards for Language Learning. We will also discuss some practical ideas for implementing these concepts in the foreign language classroom. To start, let's turn to Dr. Peter Siska, a co-author of our study, to briefly define what regional awareness entails.
Peter, why don't you tell us a little bit more about regional awareness and competence and enlighten us a little bit.
I understand regional awareness, regional competence, and then whole regional knowledge system to be truly a holistic system of understanding the space, understanding of all components of space, including the physical, natural, social, economic, and cultural components, how they relate to one another, and how everything relates to culture as well. So the deeper understanding of culture.
First and foremost, regional awareness is a broader understanding of culture that also includes knowledge of the natural physical environment and how a culture operates within this space. But why is this important for better understanding a culture and its language?
I think one of the important aspects of what we've been discussing here is that the regional awareness, the regional expertise, the regional knowledge system, it connects language and culture. It's something what is outside of language and culture, but it's also interconnected in language and culture. And often we don't recognize this concept. We often speak only about culture and language as being strongly connected. And we forget about, for example, the natural space, natural physical space that exists outside, and every human being has to develop its own understanding of space from the time he is born. We interacted with natural environment to survive, so we develop this connection with natural environment.
So, here we see that both language and culture are situated within the natural physical space of a region, and that this regional awareness provides important context for fully understanding how people interact and develop culture in relation to this space. In terms of the National Standards for Language Learning, the 5 C's, this concept has significant relevance. The second C, cultures, specifically mentions the use of space. Regional awareness specifically involves the knowledge of both the cultural practices within a regional context, as well as the products that are used for those practices in that context. One practical way to promote this type of awareness might be as simple as taking a language class outside for class.
To promote the idea of culture, language, and regional studies, regional expertise, I would advise to use outdoor activities. So taking class outdoors and teaching a lesson outside in an environment. So for example, we go outside to a place, it might be similar to this when you have Appalachian Mountains around, you have a Hudson River and Hudson River Valley. So you have so many things to talk about and so many things to explain, and you can build all that language lesson around that space that you see, that you perceive, that you can smell, that you can visualize, that you can touch, so that experience of language will be stronger.
For beginning level classes, this might entail simple vocabulary learning about the environment, geography, or location on the lexical or phrasal level. For more advanced learners, this might entail task-based activities that specifically point out the context-specific behaviors needed to orient oneself in such a space. Now let's consider the relevance of regional awareness as it applies to the next C in the national standards, connections.
Let's take a look at the next standard that I think is relevant here. That's standard 3.1, which deals with connections. And specifically 3.1 has to do with furthering knowledge of other disciplines through the foreign language. And we talked about earlier about this understanding of integrating disciplines by having guest teachers come in, inviting them in a team-taught environment, having them use their expertise to raise awareness, and at the same time we can teach the relevant language material that would go along with that material. What do you think about that idea?
This is an extremely important idea because it takes us back to that complexity and to that holistic approach in understanding the space, understanding the language, and understanding of culture. So yes, I believe this is a very important aspect. For example, you speak about certain language skills, but those language skills occur in a region. And economy is very important for every region. People need to survive in that region, so that's why they organize their economic life to survive. So the economists would be very beneficial to come into a class, language class, along with some geographer that would teach them physical geography, life scientist, biologist, I believe, as well as some other social scientist, historian that speaks about the historical background of that the place. So it could be really very integrated teaching.
Here we see that regional awareness can be promoted by integrating language teaching with other disciplines. This can be done by inviting guest instructors from other departments to share their expertise in our language classrooms in a team-taught atmosphere. This not only promotes interdisciplinary collaboration, but also helps show the interconnectedness of language and other elements important to regional awareness. Let's now consider the relevance of regional awareness to the fourth standard, comparisons.
The last standard that I wanted to mention was standard 4.1, which has to do with comparisons and through how comparing language with their native language with a foreign language, students get to understand the nature of language better. And in this case, I think that having a discussion about language change and how certain aspects of language, specifically spatial concepts and geographic concepts, are resistant to change in any language. They tend to stay the same. The names of rivers, the names of mountains, they tend to stay the same over time. They hardly ever change. Do you have any ideas on that?
There are numerous examples in many languages, and as you pointed out, they seem to stay forever while the world is changing around. These terms, the geographic terms, stay forever, and we borrow them from place to place, from time to time. They seem to be very resistant to the dynamics. So there are numerous examples. For example, Carpathian Mountains, the Tribech Mountains. They are not actually connected to the particular language, Russian or Slovak or Polish, but they are actually more historical than that nobody even knows where they come from. So we have that aspect of language and the culture. So there's a lot of borrowing going on, a lot of terms that float around throughout the history as well. So it's a very dynamic process.
In this category, regional awareness can be promoted through awareness-raising activities that most likely already exist in your language classroom. Through comparative analysis of geographic and historical terms that are resistant to change, as well as terms that are borrowed from other languages, we raise awareness about the nature of language and help students to think critically about regional dynamics and how they are similar or different from our own.